Okay, right, so 7 o'clock, so welcome along to Tuxhill Farm here in West Norfolk. So yeah, we're a family farm with 3 generations of flower growing history. We have a small mixed farm really, a little bit of arable, but the vast majority of what we do here is cut flowers. A range of seasonal crops right through the year, so we go right through the year. We have supply 52 weeks of the year, supplying UK retailers, mostly supermarkets, and some online retailers as well. Growing a range of seasonal crops, 4 key crops which are tulips, scented stocks, Japanese asters, and then a range of different lilies. And so that takes us all through the year. So today we're going to be looking around the tulip process, so right from bulb to harvest. We're very lucky with tulips, it's all here pretty much under one roof, so we can look at the whole process. We've actually just finished planting for the season. We finished on Friday. We've been planting since early October, so 7 months of planting, which has just come to an end. 28 million bulbs, all planted by hand, one by one into trays. So if we have a look over here, so this is our raw material. This is what we start with. So this is a tulip bulb. This would have been harvested in Holland last summer, June or July. Lifted out of the ground, given its treatment that it needed. So basically with the bulbs, what we're doing is we're aiming to trick them into thinking they've had their winter. We do that with a combination of cold storage and heat treatment to make the bulb think that it's already had its winter, so when it comes into our glass house it's ready to flower. We want to trick the bulbs into thinking spring's arrived early, so they produce a nice spring flower. What we're really aiming to do in the glass house is to create or recreate a bright, sunny, warm spring day right from the end of October right through until the end of May, which does obviously bring with it challenges with the elements outside, but we are very lucky growing indoors, we are in control. So what we do with these bulbs, so the system we use is a fully hydroponic system. These are the crates that we use. So this is a forcing crate that we plant the bulbs into. The planting process is literally spiking the bulb onto the spikes in the tray. So we've literally impaled the bulb on the spikes. The reason for that is once the plant grows, obviously it's going to be quite top heavy. It's going to have the leaves and the flower to support. It hasn't got a root system going down into soil because we're growing in water. So there's not a lot of support for the plant, but by impaling it on the spikes, that supports the plant and stops it falling over. We want them to stand up straight so we don't get bent stems. We then fill up with water. We've got a blue plug in the middle here with some drain holes, so the water will fill up to the drain hole and then run through. So it will run through out of the bottom of the tray. That's very important because when we take them into the cold store, which is the next step, so once they're planted they go into the cold store, and inside the cold store we give them water. So you can see above the trays we've got an irrigation system, and the fact that the drain holes in the middle of the tray mean we can fill the entire stack just by running water into the top tray, which will then drain through into the one below, and so on all the way down the stack. So we can fill the whole stack, 2 pallets, 22 trays, by giving water from above. The other advantage of that is it means we can change the water. Being able to change the water is very important because when we've planted these bulbs, after a few days we change the water because we're likely to see, so in here these have only been in a few days and we've got roots already starting to develop. The reason we put them in cold store is we're trying to suppress the growth of the sprout, but we want the roots to develop. We want a nice strong root system for when we take them into the glass house. The problem we get, particularly if the bulbs have been harvested young and the skins are not set, as we call it, the skins are soft, we get tannins leaching out of the skin which discolour the roots, make them brown and stop them growing. So we're looking for nice clean white roots. So they're looking good so far, but being able to change the water means that if we think we've got a problem with the roots going brown, we can give more water, get clean water. So we're able to effectively change our growing medium, change what we're growing the tulips in just by giving more water. And it freshens the water and keeps the roots nice and clean and healthy, hopefully. So yeah, so they go into here at 5 degrees, so we're cooling this to 5 degrees. In both of these stores, where there's capacity for about 3.6 million tulips in the 2 stores, at the moment there's probably only about 1.6 in there. We've got 2 weeks, 2 relatively small weeks. A big week of planting for us would be about 1.5 million bulbs, but yeah, we're coming towards the end of the season now, so it's a bit less. So they go into there at 5 degrees for 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, we're looking for something like this. So we've got a tray of tulips here, which have come out. Well, these have been in cold store for 2 weeks. And you can see we've got a nice, clean, well, relatively clean. Some of these are slightly brown, but these are fairly good. Nice, healthy root system. We've got a sprout which has started to develop. The key thing for us really is the sprouts haven't got too big and started to grow into the tray above. These are actually ready for housing tomorrow. So these will be going into the glass house probably tomorrow or Tuesday. And that's what we're looking for. Relatively even, nice healthy root system ready to go into the glass house. Once again, say we've got the growing medium as water. We actually tip that water out before we take them into the glass house. So we're starting with fresh growing medium again. We're in control. It's a big advantage. If we were growing in soil, we'd have to be watching out for soil-borne diseases, keeping soil conditions absolutely right. By using the water, it makes it very easy, and obviously we can see the root system, we can see the bulb, so we know if anything's going wrong. So it's a very good, very clean system. So the next stage, we take them out of the cold store, we'll tip the water out, put them into the glass house, and that is when the bulb thinks, right, spring's arrived, I need to start producing a flower. So we say in the glass house, the key thing really is temperature, humidity, and keeping the water topped up. So from the early October, as soon as we start bringing tulips in, until the end of May, we'll be looking to maintain a temperature of somewhere around 16.5 degrees. That nice spring day. So a nice temperature for a nice spring day. We've got obviously a lot of light being inside a glass house. The other thing we have to control though is humidity, because we've got a lot of water in the growing area. And if we have very high humidity, it can cause problems. The leaves can't transpire quickly enough, and we get problems with what we call sweating, which is when the cells in the leaves can't handle all the water being pumped in by that strong root system, and they actually burst, and we get problems with leaves sweating, which discolours the foliage and looks really unpleasant. So we
have a question from Annabelle. Do you add nutritions to the water?
Yeah, so in the water we add a small amount of fertiliser. The reason for that again is to do with this. A lot of that is to do with the sweating. If we didn't raise the EC of the water slightly, the osmosis would be pushing too much water into the plant too quickly. So by adding a bit of fertiliser, we just slow that process down a little bit. It also means we can make sure the plant is getting what it needs. So we give trace elements plus some calcium nitrate, calcium chloride, just to control the growth. The goodness to produce the flower should really be in that bulb. If the bulb grower in Holland has done his job and it's been a good growing season, that bulb should have everything it needs to produce a healthy flower. So the next stage, we bring them in. So we've seen that the sprouts will be coming in about somewhere between 0 and 50 mil. We'll then bring them into the heated glass house, and we'll basically house them. So we've got benches here. If we move across here, we put the trays onto benches, which makes it easier for harvesting. So they're at a nice waist height, so we're not bending double. We're not having to bend over and do the harvesting. So we've actually got some Royal Virgin here, which was the same variety we looked at in the cold store. So these have been in now for around 5 or 6 days. 6 days these have been in the glass house. So you can see already within 6 days they've really coloured up. Obviously the chlorophyll in the leaves, it's gone green. We've had very yellow shoots because they hadn't had the light, but now they've been exposed to the light. The leaves have obviously gone a good nice green, and you can see the roots have continued to grow. So we've got quite a strong root system. So this is after only 6 days, so very quick, and it's a very efficient system because of that. The quick growth, I say we're recreating a spring day when tulips will be growing very quickly. I often think it's like a pneumatic ram. You've got the roots at the bottom pumping that water in, and the plant just throws its spike up very quickly. If we go a little bit further over the glass house, we'll actually see some which are almost ready to harvest. So these will have been in slightly longer, but I say it's a very quick process, particularly at this time of year. Earlier in the season it can take 30, even 40 days right at the start of the season. But by this time of the year, this is the quickest point of the season. Obviously the ambient temperatures are very high outside, day length is longer, and the bulbs have been in cold storage for an awful long time, so they're really ready to produce a flower. So these are some that have been in slightly longer. So if we look, these were housed on the 20th of April. So they've been in for 12 days, just under 2 weeks, and we've already got flowers. So we've got really strong, healthy, 35-40 centimetre long. That's pretty much ideal what we're looking for. That's an ideal stem length for what we're looking for retail sales. We normally cut them off at around 35 centimetres. That's perfect. And I say that is pretty much ready to harvest. That's the sort of stage we're looking for. Some colour, but not too much. We want the real show of the flower, the real colour to be in the customer's vase. So we aim to crop them at the right stage, and that's very important. We're cropping twice a day, every day, so including Christmas Day, New Year's Day, 7 days a week, right from the very start of the season when we start harvesting at the end of November, right through until the end of this month or even early June. We'll be harvesting 2 or even 3 times a day. So yeah, that's basically the process. So when we're harvesting, we have these monorail trolleys hanging over the bed. You can see it's nice waist height, so it's fairly easy work, nice warm environment, so it's not like being out in the middle of a field trying to cut veg or daffodils. So it's quite, we're quite privileged in here, being nice and warm. And it's literally as easy as that. We're lifting them out of the trays, roots and all, bulbs and all. We lay them onto the monorail cars, we can take up and down the beds. We then bring them back to the end of the bed. We transfer them to these tipping containers.
We have a question. How do you measure and control the humidity in the air?
So yeah, the humidity in the glass house, we've got aspirated, can't see one, it's further over. It's an aspirated screen hanging just over there. So the white box hanging on the post, if you can see that, it's an aspirated screen. There's a thermometer, hygrometer in there, which are constantly measuring temperature and humidity. If you look above, we've actually got, so you can't see the sky, you can actually see we've got thermal screens. So basically they've been pulled across to keep the temperature in the glass house, to reduce the amount of heating we have to do. The problem with that is when they do close, it does increase the humidity because we haven't got the cold glass to get any condensation. So the computer control looks at the aspirated screen constantly, and when required it will open the screens and even open the vents in the roof. So we have windows in the roof of the glass house which open. It will open the vents, control the heating, control the humidity, and it will use background heat to reduce the humidity as well. So using a various range of measures depending on the outside conditions and the conditions in the glass house, we balance that humidity. We're looking to maintain a humidity in here of around 75 to 80%. Any higher than that and we run the risk of seeing problems with the crop. So 75 to 80% is quite high, but it's quite difficult to maintain because we've got a warm environment with lots of water in it. So it does take quite a lot of maintaining. Just on the heating, so you can see there's a network of white pipes above our head. Those are the heating pipes. So we've got 2 boilers on site. We're heating just over a hectare here. And we've got about 1.5 megawatts of capacity, all with biomass. So that's all wood chip heating. So sustainable, zero carbon heating. The wood that we use is all virgin roundwood, which comes in from local forestry. We're quite lucky here in Norfolk that we have got some forestry quite close by, and it's all the real outgrades of timber that they can't use for anything else. So it gives them a market for their secondary grade timber, and we end up with a very cheap and reliable fuel source. The other thing the wood chip does is it removes the volatility. Years ago when we were relying on the oil price, we would be quoting prices for the following season not knowing where the oil price would be. In the last 12 months we've seen wild fluctuations in oil price with what's been happening around the world. With the wood, we've already bought the wood in for next season, or we're buying the wood at the moment for next season. So that fixes that price in, it takes another variable out of the equation for us.
How many people work here?
So at peak season we get up to around 100 people. We run through the year, we run with a core team of 70 to 80. But yeah, at peak season, which would be Mother's Day, May, which is just coming up, and August, we'd be getting up to almost 100 or just over 100 maybe. Vast majority of those staff are EU migrants, so Eastern Europeans come over here, including all of our supervisors. It's a family business, but we've got a lot of very good people who've been with us for a number of years. Most of those guys started out as migrant workers, came over here on a short period, and they've stayed with us and built their skills, and they're an absolutely key part of the business now. We are very, very reliant on those guys. So we've got the stems here harvested. So we'll harvest them into these tipping containers, and you can see they're sort of laying down. The reason we do that is because it makes it a lot easier to load them in and stop them falling over. What we can then do is we can put another board, so we close the box, we can stand them up so they're standing completely straight upright. The reason we do that is we can then wheel them into the cold store, because we have a batch of red here, but we need red 7 days right through the week. If this batch of red clears within a couple of days, we need a way to create a buffer, because we've got a very short window to harvest the stems. Once the stems are ready, we've got a matter of, well, probably 12 hours, even less than that on a warm sunny day, to harvest them before they're too mature to open. So it's very important that we have that ability to buffer using the cold store. Some of our other crops we can get away with leaving them in the glass house, something like a scented stock or a lily. We've got probably 3 or 4 days in the glass house when, from the point of minimum cut stage through to when it's going to be unsaleable. With tulips, that is a matter of hours. So we're harvesting, say, twice a day, 3 times a day, even when it's really warm, and we use the cold store as the buffer. So we hold them in the cold store, and that allows us to buffer the colour mix.
One more question about labour. How many people work in a glass house each day?
That would be the total. So in the glass house here, we also have the packing in here, so there'd probably be up to sort of 40 or 50 people in the glass house at any one time. So the next stage, we've harvested the stems. They will then be moved across to the processing area. They'll either go into cold store or straight onto the machines, depending on whether we need that colour at that particular time, or we may be holding on to them and spreading them out through the week. So that will vary what happens to them, but they will go either into cold store or onto the machines. So the actual grading and processing of the stems is done automatically. We've got two automatic processing machines over here. These are Berkamex Aurora machines specifically designed for tulips. The beauty of tulips is, compared to a lot of our other crops, it's a very big global industry. Tulips are worldwide. I mean, in Holland there's over 2 billion stems of tulips produced per annum. In the UK it's probably around 200 million. So, what that means is there's enough critical mass. As a machinery manufacturer like Berkamex, they've got the critical mass that they need to spend money developing machinery specific for the crop. So we've got very, very good automated solutions for bunching and processing tulips. So these two machines, there's probably £1 million worth of machines here, but they will take the place of probably 12 or 15 people. So they're a very, very important part of producing the stems efficiently. The machine works by cutting off the bulb. So we take off the bulb. We've got the debulber here, which does what it says on the tin. It takes off the bulbs. The stems are then elevated into the machine, spun through 90 degrees, and then they pass through a series of cameras. So we take a range of images of every single stem, so 25 million, 26 million stems through the season, and for every stem we get a range of images. So we get an infrared image, a digital colour image from the side and from below, and also an X-ray image. The reason we take an X-ray is, if you can imagine, we've got a tulip head here, we can have a leaf hanging down covering that head when it's presented to the camera. By using X-ray we can look through the leaf and get an accurate measurement of the position of the bud and the overall length of the stem. So once the machine has done that, it knows how long each stem is, whether it's up to the customer specification. It will then place them into the bunching stations according to their grade. A robotic manipulator will then pick the bunch up, place it down onto a flower line, which will take it through, put a band on it, and then we're putting in raw, ungraded stems at this end, and we're getting finished bunches out of the other end. Each one of these machines on a good day will be grading anything between 100 and 130,000 stems. So in a good day we can process 250,000 stems in around 10 hours.
What temperature is the cold store, and how long does it take for the tulips to reach the best temperature for long shelf life?
So when we're storing the product on the bulb or the bunch product, we'll be storing it at 2 degrees. That's the ideal temperature for storing them. And we can store them for sort of 3, 4, 5 days with no real detriment to vase life for the customer. We try to cold store everything because it does help to pull the field heat out of the crop. Obviously they're all coming from 16, 17 degrees in the glass house, so it does help just chill them down before we pack them, so everything goes into the retail packaging nice and cold, ready to go into store.
What happens to the bulbs when the flowers are cut off?
Yeah, so the bulbs, so again, sustainability with leaf is a big part of what we do, so we have to find a solution for our waste. The tulip bulbs is probably one of the best success stories we've got for that. We've got a local vegetable processing plant, which are a very big AD plant, and they absolutely love tulip bulbs because they're a very clean, very high energy fuel source. You've obviously got no soil, so they absolutely love them. They're like rocket fuel for AD plants, so it's a really good use of the waste, so they get turned into electricity basically. So yeah, so that's the processing. The next stage would be they would come across to the other side here, where they would be then packed. So we've got more processing machinery. We've then got flower lines on this side of the area, so it's all within the glass house, nice and warm. We've got 2 packing lines here, so there'd probably be sort of 20, 30 people on here on a busy day. And they're basically, what they're doing is drawing on the stock from the cold store, taking the stock out of the cold store, putting them into retail packaging. So the vast majority of what we sell leaves the farm ready to go directly onto the supermarket shelf. It will be sleeved, labelled, ready to go, so it's finished retail packaging. So yeah, we'll just have a quick look at the stems, and then say if anyone's got any more questions, please do post them in the comments, or we can answer questions afterwards if you want to post them then, as they occur to you. So yeah, looking over here, just got some examples. So these are some of actually last week's varieties. So we tend to take a sample of different varieties each week, so we can see how they perform. So these have been in, I think, just over a week. So you see we have a good range of colours. We need 6 or 7 colours every day of the week to pack our orders. We're packing them out in different formats. So we've got the basic 8-stem bunch, which will go into, these are all going into the UK supermarket retail. We also produce mixed bunches and also some bigger format, bigger packs. So you can see there's a range. It depends obviously on the customer specification, price point, but that's the sort of thing we're producing day in, day out. Orders 7 days a week, so 7 days a week we'll be producing. We don't know what those orders are going to be. We get a fairly good forecast, but every morning we wait for the orders to drop in and we pack to order. Obviously with any fresh produce, but flowers particularly, freshness is absolutely critical. We're aiming to shorten that chain as much as possible. So we're packing to order day 1 for day 2 into the supermarket depot, by late day 2 or day 3 onto the shelf. So we're trying to keep that chain as short as possible.
What other flowers do you grow, and is the process technical for all flowers you grow? And do you have any outdoor crop?
Yeah, so other crops, we grow scented stocks, which we're just about to start. We start harvesting them this week. We grow a range of lilies, LA lilies, rose lilies, which are double oriental, longy lilies. We also grow Japanese asters, which is the only outdoor flower crop we have. We've just started planting those, which is why we don't want too much frost. About 3.5 million stems of Japanese asters. And then we've also got a few smaller crops like Eryngium, Astrantia that we're trialling. But we've got the 4 key crops that see us right through the year. And in terms of technical, well, yeah, the tulips it seems very high tech, but actually tulips is a relatively easy system if you've got the right system in place, you've got the hygiene right and the right bulb stocks. It's not a bad crop to grow. Some of the soil grown crops, there's more that can go wrong. With a tulip, they're in the glasshouse for such a short period of time, there isn't a lot of time for too much to go wrong with them. As long as you start off with a nice clean tray, clean growing medium, which is clean water, and a good bulb stock, it's a relatively trouble-free crop to grow. It's unheard of that we would have to apply chemicals in the glasshouse. We don't use any agrochemicals in the glasshouse. On the other crops, we have more problems. There's more fungal diseases, there's more soil-borne diseases that we have to be able to control. So yeah, I think we're coming towards the end. Just to finish off, it's Leaf open or online farm Sundays. We just thought I'd say a little bit about Leaf, why we support Leaf and what it means for us on the farm here. Obviously within a glasshouse environment it's difficult in some ways to see wildlife because we haven't really got a lot of wildlife in the glasshouse. But we have got a small arable farm, as I say, which helps us with that. So we do quite a lot on the arable side to help wildlife. So we have pollinator mixes, we do a lot of supplementary feeding, we look after birds with nest boxes. Obviously, sustainability of our inputs is important. So we've got, say, biomass heating, solar PV. We also catch an awful lot of water across. We grow on 7 different sites with glasshouses and polytunnels. We've got about 15 acres of protected structures, which means we catch in a year, even though we are a relatively dry part of the country, we do catch an awful lot of water. So we store that water in reservoirs. The water that we tip out from the tulip trays is also caught in the reservoir, pumped into the reservoir, and then we use that for irrigation outdoors. So we try and have as much of a closed loop on water as possible and use as much renewable energy as we possibly can. But yeah, so a big part of what we do is looking after the biodiversity on the farm, birds in particular. A good example in terms of combining those things, a few years ago we built a new block, or we relocated a block of glass. We had to build a new reservoir to catch the water because the drainage authority want you to do something with the water rather than putting it in their drains. So we constructed a reservoir, but we designed it in such a way that we've got planting all around it. It's been really designed for wildlife. I think we've got probably 13 or 14 red-listed bird species already using that after only probably 4 or 5 years. So things like that, you can marry up the sustainability with the biodiversity and have a really good result for wildlife all round.
Last question.
Yep.
Do you allow visitors?
We do host some visits. We have to obviously be careful. The reason we're having this visit tonight at 7 o'clock is normally there would be forklifts and people buzzing about in here, lots of noise from the machinery. But yeah, we do host visits. If anyone's interested in visiting, you can certainly send us a message and we'll try and accommodate. We host as many, we haven't been able to in the last year, obviously with COVID, but yeah, in the past we have hosted quite a lot of visitors, so yeah, that's no problem. Okay, right, so thank you. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a whistle-stop tour, 25 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it was. But say, if you've got any more questions, please do post them in the comments section and I'll try and answer them this evening. Yep, okay, thanks very much.